Football is more than just a game. It's about passion, community, and a deep-rooted history that spans generations. And for over 60 years, Hanover Football Club has been at the heart of Portadown, shaping players, creating memories, and building a legacy that stands the test of time. From humble beginnings to hard-fought victories, from local rivalries to moments of triumph, Hanover's story is one of resilience, commitment, and pride. This is more than just a football club. It's a family, a tradition, and a symbol of what the beautiful game means to so many. In this special series, we're taking you on a journey through time, exploring the club's founding years, the legends who wore the blue and white, the challenges overcome, and the bright future ahead. Through interviews, archives, and first-hand accounts, we'll uncover the story of Hanover FC like never told before. This is the history of Hanover Football Club. This is our story. So Wayne, Lappin and Reid. So 3 dyed-in-the-wool Hanover men who have all been down here since they were teenagers, all have family connections to the club through their fathers, and who have all proudly played for Hanover for a combined total of nearly 50 years between the three of them. So we'll go back to 2010 for a second to talk about the Mid-Ulster Cup win. Lappin and Reid, so you would have only been about 16 back then and playing in the team and winning that trophy. What are your memories about playing for the Seconds back then when you first signed?
So me and Reid actually first signed under Big Naylor. Naylor had got in touch with his dad because me and Reid weren't getting a kick at Lockall. And we went down to attack and trained down there with the first team. Remember Naylor saying to me, him and Bob, that we're in the squad with the first team this Saturday, and the three of us couldn't believe it. And went down to Lower Maze, and there's still big characters in the changing rooms. You know, me and Reid went down and watched Hanover for years, and we were going down now in the changing room with these guys that we had watched for years.
Yeah.
So it was a big step for us as young boys. We were only maybe, 14, 15?
15.
Yeah.
15. Yeah.
And then we sort of finished that season, you know, we're sort of in and out playing with the Seconds and whatever. And then, you know, the following year we're with the reserves quite a fair bit after that. And we sort of went on then, won the Mid-Ulster League Cup.
He sort of would have let us go with the Seconds maybe for 3 or 4 matches, and then he would have brought us back in. And I suppose that was him probably trying to drip feed us into, as you say, all those big characters. Like, you were going down and that was nerve-wracking, but at the same time you were coming out in kinks of laughter. Like, you know, what was it like? It was unreal.
That was some of the characters you were talking about for the first team, but who would have been playing in the second team around that time whenever you first came down, sort of 2009, 2010?
Probably had the likes of Kyle Johnson, Stuart Johnson, Richard Woods, yourself.
Yeah, you had Wayne, P.D. Smith,
McCabe.
Dean Crowe, Wilco,
McCabe. Yeah, so a lot of big characters down there too. A lot of, you know, yeah.
I can remember Lossie playing around that time
Lossie as well. Yeah.
And doing nets on the odd occasion in Crawford's big orange goalkeeper top.
It was actually done nets the semi-final, the time we won the Mid-Ulster League Cup. He done nets in the semi-final and won penalty, so he actually got us to the final. But then the final, there's obviously a story about a few of the senior players leaving it to us young boys to go ahead and win it. They thought a trip to Magaluf was more important, so it was up to us young boys to win the cup that time.
So that was Lappin and Reid, so that was your first taste of silverware and celebrations in the club. That was a famous photo of you guys as the Cubs in the corner that night.
Yeah. I'm wearing a lovely pink shirt. One day we were all told that week in the lead up, these boys need to come down here in a shirt and tie. So I think my ma brought me over to model on.
I was just about to say I went to model on as well.
Pink shirt and a lovely pink tie, and yeah, it went down, and obviously we won the match, and came back here, and I think we were coming back thinking it was going to be party time, and there was about 7 sitting.
I think it ended up me, you and Alex and
Fat Scotty.
I think that was it.
Remember him saying, listen, there's a free bar, but I think there was only 4 or 5 of us turned up. But it was definitely a good introduction to, you know, winning things, I suppose. But again, we were only 15 at the time. I don't know about you, but I thought So our first full season, I thought to myself, this is the norm. Like you're going to be doing this every year, but it turned out it was another 6 or 7 years before we actually at reserve level before we won again.
Yeah.
So Bill came in as manager in the 2011-2012 season after a bit of a turbulent period for the club. So Dean, can you tell me about that time period for the club?
Yeah, as you say, won the league, won the Marshall Cup. It was probably a period of instability, I would say. There was lots of things going on outside of the football remit, which was with no real home facility. We had to go and play our home games at Seago. We also then had to train in Lurgan. So there's quite a bit of upheaval through just renovations at Brownstown. So a lot of that led to probably players moving on, players taking better opportunities. Again, players probably deserved them as well, coming off the back of winning the league and winning the Marshall Cup. There were some players moved on to progress. But as a club, I think there's a lot of uncertainty because we didn't really know where our home ground was going to be, where our training facility was going to be. And I think it took 2-3 years to ride that storm, if I'm being honest.
So we actually ended up relegated in 2009. So we came 11th out of 12 teams. Bourneview was just 1 point above us. They survived. Then we had Terry McCrory coming in, then Rudzo, then Grass. So Bill, you sort of came in then 2011, 2012. So how did this come about?
Well, initially, when I left Portdown, Rudzo had actually spoke to me and asked me to take over the seconds. And I said to him I would for a couple of months or whatever until they got somebody. And then midway through that season, the committee had asked me would I be interested in taking over the firsts. And as Dean has stated there, training facilities, everything was up the left. You know, you're going to travel to Lurgan. Also, Norman Wilkinson got us Lurgan Rugby Club, but you were going over to train, maybe 4 or 5 people turning up, which wasn't ideal. So tried to get training facilities in place. Richard Lappin had sorted out games to be played at Seago with no home pitch. You know, so it was then that I took on the first time job.
So how did you feel about it coming in?
I'd actually, when I left board, I'd finished with football. I had 20 seasons of it, and sort of thought I would go and watch my young fella Gaza played. Says I'll go and watch Gaza and that, and that would do me. But then when Rudzo asked me, I didn't want to see the club stuck because I'd long association with the club, watching, playing, all the rest.
So who did you bring in as your backroom team?
Young Mr. Crowe. Well, having went through all the youth thing with his uncle Steve, and I knew straight away Dean had more of a leg in. He was 25, 26, whatever, playing, but showed a real interest in the coaching side of it. And I'd asked Dean and Nigel McCartney, Skip was coming down of his playing time, and I thought he'd be a good man to bring in because I held in such high regard in the club.
So Dean, what had your involvement been with Hanover up until this point?
Supporter and as a player, basically. I followed Hanover from as young, and then obviously moved, I think at 18 signed for a club, and then played for the club. So played for the club probably, I think it was 27, 28. So it's been 9, 10 years. And then obviously when Bill had asked me to come on board, it was probably a big step for me because at that stage, a lot of the players were senior players that I looked up to. So you were going in to a dressing room that was people like, you know, Nigel was just finishing, but Barry Harrison, Jason Woods, players like that, you know, the Bunty, yes, there was players that you had to earn respect, but you had to earn respect. So for me, it was a big thing, and I would, in my part, I'd be eternally grateful for Bill because it gave me my first probably step on the coaching ladder because I wouldn't have got those opportunities if I'm being honest. And the thing was too, the senior players, other clubs you probably got a lot of stick. I didn't get no stick. I got a lot of respect, and it was straight away. There was nobody giving off about anything, and probably then through time you earned then your respect as well through what you were doing probably and on the coaching side of things. But again, without Bill, I wouldn't have been doing what I'm doing today.
So Hyndes, you were down at the club at this time as well. Like, you had a successful career in the Irish League. So what attracted you to come down and play for Hanover?
Well, it was a promise. So it's, anyone knows me, I don't go back my promises. So I was coming 35 and coming the end of my career anyway. I was out of Lockall, and obviously being in and out of the club, you know, was quite a social activity goes on in the club back then, and Mr. Crowe probably led it, like, so I was in with him quite a lot. And from then it was always, you know, I'd say 30 on to 35 it was Aussie, and especially Scotty and Aussie was in my ear the whole time. So I remember saying them one time, said, listen, you know, if you know me, don't go on up, man, and I promise you, as soon as I quit, you know, we'll definitely step down to the level. So that's what happened. You know, it was a no-brainer. I knew the legs weren't coping at that level, and I basically just straight away, you know, I wanted to come down here, and like I had other opportunities with Liana and stuff like that, and I didn't even hesitate to speak to them. I didn't even want to speak to them. Just said that was my promise, and I want to come down. I grew up in the Brownstown Road, so it was a no-brainer.
Bill, whenever you came in, looking back now, it really feels like a bit of a transition period. So what sort of squad did you feel you were coming into? Like, who were the main players? And like, was it really a bit of an old guard sort of feeling about it?
Not necessarily. You know, you have the boys, Hanover through and through, Barry, Nigel, Bunty, Stephen and Jason, Robbie Yasmin's there, Big Davy Crawford, and goals, stuff, you know. Davy's work was changing, where he was having to work some Saturdays and stuff. You know, you were coming in there, plus you had a load of young lads. You had Richard, Lappin, Alex Henry, Reid, Gaza, Chris Elliott, Alex Scott was here too. Foxley.
Ian Horse.
You know, Wayne Horse, and there was a load of lads there, but it was just sorting a squad out who was going to fit in where.
P.D. Smith.
Then when said about Hyndes, you know, the ability that Hyndes had, you had to sort of look for players that I was going to try and bring in that would be on the level he was discussing there, that can play that 1-2 and play that pass, see that ball, you know, and a wee bit more. Not saying the boys weren't hard working, but fellas want to turn up for training. A lot of stuff's built on the training pitch. You know, if you can get everybody down to train, not 4 or 5, if you have 16, 17, people's looking and going, he's going to take my place. You have to build out there. And that's what was initially as soon as you come in. First thing I said was, we get the train facility sorted out, we get boys down, working hard, the rest will come.
So in those first couple of years, whenever you came in as manager, who was the signings that you made?
Well, straight out.
Stephen Douglas was a big one.
Stevie McLeod, Scott McCullough. Scotty had been seriously ill. So I'd actually said to Scott, come down, put the boots on again, do a wee bit of work. Always thinking Scott was going to play at a higher level. And to be fair to him, he came in, he worked his socks off.
So how did that signing come about?
Working for his parents, or for his father and his uncle, his granny and granda. And through work, just saying, I grew up with them boys, played football with them, and, you know. But Scott come in, worked hard. And when you're signing players of that calibre, all people want to sign.
Yeah, you've around that time period too, you've the like a Cochrane, Hughes, Shane, Brett, Skippy, Shorty, all coming in. So how do you think those people were attracted to the club? Well,
when Scott was there, they're all friends. Shorty came in. Shorty brought like Gary Topley. You know, Topper's some player. You know, Toppers come in, Dougs, and come from Market Hill. Cox was playing for Money Slane. Sorgy was already here. Sorgy was like, there's photographs of Sorgy and Lappin standing at them steps. That size.
Sorgy's time he was 14 years old.
Aye, Sorgy was playing away. You know, but a lot of boys that was brought in, you were sort of hoping they're coming in for the club and they're going to stay with the club. And there's quite a few of them still here today, you know.
So with those signings that you made too, as you touched on earlier, you still had a bit of experience there. So like Jason Woods would have been still there, and he was the captain, and then you still had like Barry and them and all still knocking about too. So how do you think that helped? Like, do you think that helped to bring those younger players on?
well, Jason Woods and Steve Bunty, boy, they know what it's like. They won leagues. They won cups with Hanover. Jason's dedicated fella. And would grab the younger lads around him and just tell them what it meant. You're playing for the short, playing for the badge. And it is true, like, people's not getting paid fortunes to play football. You're playing because you want to play.
So a lot of new players, new younger players that they had came and joined the club, and as you said, they had all been hanging about together too. So what was the feeling like around the club at this time? Did you think it was starting to become a bit more positive and building up a bit of a buzz?
Yes, yours. It's training numbers picked up. The whole lot surrounding it. Hyndes was playing, saying that he was coming to the end of his playing. So we're trying to build in the same thing. Same with Barry, same with Nigel McCartney, So we had to fit these boys in. As I said, Davy Crawford, Shorty, we went looking a goalkeeper. And Big Shorty come in, done a great job. All of a sudden, you're sort of looking at teams saying, we're getting closer and closer to this. We're a few players missing. Yeah. That's just going to, the final pieces of the jigsaw.
I think people drive standards too. So I remember the big change was training. Like, if you've Hyndes training, you've Scott McCullough. Scott McCullough used to be at the front of everything. He was a pain in the ass, but he was at the front of everything. Jeff was actually very good at training too.
Big Crowe.
At training, if there was a new player coming down, the people like Jeff would have been the first to integrate the new player. And Scott, we used to actually say to the players, we used to say, maybe Jeff and Scott, we were like, here, make sure he feels okay. But I think the levels in training went from there and to there, in my opinion.
I remembered 100% what you're saying. I actually came down to play 1 year, and it was no more intentions other than 1 year. And then obviously Bill started developing all this here, bringing new wee bunches of players in, and next thing it was like, so I'm actually really enjoying this here. The standard was really, really going up, and you could see it at training, and the numbers were up at training, as you say. Like Scott was bringing levels up himself, so he was. Shorty coming in, Barry then, guys who you thought probably were in their last legs, got an extra year's legs in them because they wanted to be a part of this new young bunch, so they did. So for me, that was a big change. Certainly, going back to then, I was just 1 year played, doing my thing, shake hands, and away you go. And from then, it was like I want to be here for another couple of years because of what he was doing.
So in that sort of time period, 2012, 2013, 2014, we came 4th and 5th in the league. But Bill, as you'd said there, like we felt like we were close. We felt like we were nearly on the cusp of something. Mm-hmm. So leading then into the 50th anniversary season, 2014-15. So big season for the club on and off the pitch. Started by making some changes, which turned out to be very important. So the first of those was Hyndes then moving on to the coaching staff. So what was the thinking behind this, and what did you think he could bring?
Just want to tell the real story. I'll let them two tell the
game at Sego, There was a game at Sego was the breaking point.
I'll tell my story after.
He was getting booked every game. He was getting booked, and it was pure frustration. I don't know if it's frustration with him or what he's saying with others or whatever. He was becoming a pain in the arse, I'd say. and probably a pain in his own, honestly, a pain in his own side, but it was probably natural. Again, in my opinion anyway, it was natural for him to come in.
No,
but
I had said to you, we had talked about it, and says, if Hyndes going to hang these up, there's no way he's walking out. We'll have to get him on board here. And you can't really do it with two people, and 100%. You need to bounce off it. And when he did come in, the difference was noticeable straight away. There was times I was like a marriage counsellor with these type.
That's why he's between us now.
Keep him apart at times. But it worked. And he wasn't the only big signing off the pitch that year. Swing come in. we got Swing in.
They actually asked Swing before me, so to be truthful, it was Swing said bring Hyndes in as the fourth.
There's a hierarchy. There's a hierarchy of things, so we had to go with Swing.
But again, the training levels of it went up on all level. And in games that we were playing, there's memorable games you can think of. You think we're on their tails here. You know,
I think there's
are
always
starting-
things we standards again. You're like, we had obviously our own standards, but then when Hyndes came in, you're talking about constantly trying to be better and drive standards and stuff. I know this is a funny one, but the towels with red, white, and blue towels in the dressing room, and it cost the club an extra £18 a wicker to do the dry cleaning. But
I actually don't even think anyone used them.
that's what I'm saying. But
They just had to sit there and be professional.
1, 2, 3 was red, white, and blue. You know.
I still use them on holidays.
But honestly, it was. But the committee again, I'd probably go back to the committee, like people like Ozzy and people like that. If we asked for something, we got it. Like I know the club wasn't rich, yeah, but it was an extra £18. Like, you know, was almost £80 a month, whatever it is, across the year.
Committee worked out
to wash extra towels, and we asked that, and we got that.
So Sorgy and Shorty, what were your thoughts of Hyndes now hanging up the boots and becoming part of the coaching staff instead of playing alongside you?
Well, I think I was glad because I was running top goal scorer with him every year, so that would maybe help me in that way. But no, we knew what Hyndes would give, and obviously Dean as well, and to have them proper managing then, it was obviously brilliant for us, and just happy to look forward and kick on with him, I suppose. And
yeah, the professionalism just went up a notch. We didn't really know, you know, at that age you're young and you've probably never experienced that level of what we thought, well, we would have classed as proper professionalism at our level at that time. It's something we weren't used to, but we soon adapted to it, and it was brilliant moving forward.
Was that a change then? Do you notice straight away?
Yeah,
as soon as you come in,
100%, yeah. Straight away, just small wee changes. You know, your dedication being drilled into us, and you know, as Hyndes, I'm sure, has touched on, holidays, you know, weddings was a no-go during the season. So, you know, those wee small things all added up and helped towards what they were trying to do.
So Hyndes, why did you take the offer coming on to the coaching staff? Like, was it something you were looking into?
100% not. I definitely thought once it was finishing playing, I was going. That was the no-brainer for me again. But their story, I have to agree with. I was getting to the stage where there was frustration coming out of them every other week, and it probably was frustration of the desire to win something at the club. But I knew probably I'm going to be the unlucky one here. You know, I've been down here 3 years and I came to win something, and you know, that's what Scotty always said. You know, you'll come down, you'll win trophies, and I sort of in my head, anyone knows what I'm like. I hate losing, and at that stage, I felt to myself, listen, I'm maybe not going to win something here, and the frustration came out in the pitch probably the wrong way. And then when them boys asked me to come in, listen, at that stage, you know, I'd always loved being around the club, and they thought to themselves, right, I'll give it a go. And you know, I would have to say what Dean said, like, without Bill, 100%, I wouldn't be where I was today in coaching. That's just a fact. So it is. What he done was unbelievable for me. Give me the opportunity, and not only give me the opportunity, but give me the opportunity to be myself. So we sort of we never really spoke about it. It was just a natural sort of thing that Bill would have come in, done what he wanted to do, say his piece, and then it was handed over to me. And I probably would say the game at that stage was evolving till where it's become today. And when I think back, it was a stage where the last couple of managers I played under, like Stephen Baxter and stuff, was starting to put things on a board and stuff like that, which hadn't been done. And I thought, here, we'll give it a go. So he was the one let me do that. And probably when the board went up at the time, I remember Bunty and all going, what is this man doing here? Like, this is he's putting bullet points up on boards and stuff like that there. And there was a guys looking at you, you know, going ways up. And to be honest with you, again, probably what Dean said, you know, when you're coming in, when you play with players, as much as people sit and think, listen, you play it a bit and you're coming down, you can play at that level. It's a daunting task when you're standing up in front of a changing room, and especially with guys who you're in the club with, and they had the, you know, it was you giving all the attention. It was nervous, like, but I have to say the boys were brilliant. As much as the crack was, what's he doing? They bought into it straight away, and I think at that stage we all just, you know, through him letting us do our thing, we started raising the levels up every time, you know.
I think that's where the likes of Jason Woods come in, because he had been there that long, and I think, and he was one of the older players, but he wanted to learn this. you're putting stuff, set pieces, whatever. Woodsy was sitting. Now listen, boys, concentrate. This is your job. This is what you have to do.
Yeah.
You know, we don't just we do this.
Woodsy was very good. Woodsy was very good. Anything that we done right through, build right through the Hyndes. If there was something needed said, I remember him putting us out of the dressing room one day to say it, and we were told to get out.
Yeah.
And literally he just took charge. If there was something needed said to the players, he said it, and it didn't have to come from us. And I think
the players listened. I would say even I learned from his time as well. The one thing about Woodsy was we both done it in our team talks, and it was like, Woodsy, your first tackle, set the marker, because that brings everyone around you. And he was full-blooded. There wasn't one bit of dirt in Jason Woods. He's probably one of the hardest players I know, but honest. And Woodsy would have went out first couple of tackles, and we would have known if we were on it by him just bang in the tackle, and you could see the whole team lifting from that there. So Jason was massive in the change rooms, and I think, again, for a senior player who had been there that length of time, he could have been looking at, all of us sort of sitting going here, just name the team and get on with it. But he was interested, and he wanted this progression for the club, which was a big help for us.
So you felt like really the beginning of this 50th anniversary season, you were on the cusp of something, but you were maybe having a missing piece. So you'd mentioned Swing, you'd mentioned Hyndes, but that season you also signed Justy Bradley at the beginning of the season. So how did we sign him? What's the story here?
Initially, I was down to Stephen Hearn. He run about with Gaza, and Gaza says Hearn was signing for the club, and Gaza says Hearn says he's got a centre forward. There's a centre forward you need to take a look at. So myself and Hyndes, Armstrong Cup, Norma, that's summer, took a drive up, says we'll go up and have a look at him. Within 5 minutes we're looking at each other going, he won't have to. And like he hadn't scored goal or anything else. Just his movement, his awareness.
I think the irony about it that night was it was probably one of the worst first half. We actually left at half time. It was one of the worst first halves of football. The Armstrong Cup was played in the middle field. It was a real tight pitch. The centre half was all over the top of Bradley, and we kept sitting going, he'll do us. He'll do us. And I remember leaving at half time, and Bill turned around and says, what do you think? And I said, they've already sent him attacks. They've sent Bradley attacks, and I'll phone him tomorrow, so I will. And then, which was another big, that's another big thing, when you say the things that Bill learned you. Bill always let me go and do the talking to players. It's something I liked. So we had went and watched his call. Obviously, we wanted to sign Bradley. He was the manager. So he'd saying to me, listen, will you go and have a word with him? So I texted him before we left, and the laugh was, Bradley will probably say himself, the laugh was, he was like, why were you looking to sign me after how bad I played? And we said, listen, you'll do for us. So I remember pulling up, and I was going to see my mum on lunchtime, and I pulled up in the car, and it says, I'm phoning him straight away. It was the next day. And not like Bradley, by the way, he answered straight away. So he did. So the phone call went on for at least 40 minutes, he'll tell you himself. And it was just one of those moments that, like, I knew straight away when you talk to a player, you always, Bill, know yourself, and he probably asked me to come in, he knew it was the right move. You get that wee feeling, but straight away, when I went back to them boys, I said, listen, this kid's on it here, like. And then from there, like, the rest is history.
Yeah, so I joined 2014 after a wee spell with Loughgall. I played the last few, say 8 games for Loughgall first team. There was a few complications or whatever. But yeah, we had a wee tournament. I think it's the Armstrong Cup, it's called. Guys might correct me if I'm wrong. Where I was asked to join Loughgall reserves and give them a handout. At that stage, I didn't know I was being watched by Hanover. But yeah, I got a phone call after from one of my friends, Herney, and he had said, what are your thoughts about maybe joining Hanover?
So what attracted you then to come down to Hanover? What got you over the line?
It was purely Herney's word. He had told me there was a good group of lads capable of doing things. And yeah, he kind of persuaded me to come down. It wasn't long after then I got a phone call from Gaffer, Stephen Hyndes. Many phone calls in work, out of work, getting into bed, getting out of the shower. Where yeah, he also had a big role to play in persuading me down.
So we started off flying then. So we won our first 2 league games, Comberrack in the Irish Cup, beat Southside 8-0 in the Marshall Cup, and Justy scored 19 in his first 7 games, including a hat-trick, a double hat-trick, you know, and a last-minute winner. So what's
We're
your...
fixing that game, I think.
Yeah, double hat-trick. So what are your thoughts watching this new signing become a success straight away?
I think it's the thoughts of the all people stand the other side of the fence. People couldn't believe it. You know, Owen Gracie's been here an awful long time, and he's saying it's the best he's seen. You know, Hyndes retired. If he had been 5 years younger playing alongside him, there's another 30 goals a season. You know, on top of what Bradley's scoring. You know, Justy scored 50 goals a season.
That season he scored 51, yeah.
You know, going to the Cumber Rack, you know, Irish Cup, big games, big players.
So just on that Cumbernack game, from a supporter's point of view, and I'm sure from a players and management game as well, it's a game that stands out in the memory, and it set us on our way that season. It was a brilliant day out. We got the result, and there was plenty of drama. So tell us about that game.
Can I speak? I think myself and Stephen was out. Dean was talking to all the boys in the change rooms, had them in, the boys were getting changed. He was having a ward. We were outside, and there was a burger stall behind the goal up at the building, and their players and some of the other ones were saying to their goalkeeper, at least when we were playing down that way, you'd be able to go and get yourself a burger. They were thinking it was going to be double figures. That was your team talk.
I think Mid-Ulster football as well.
Yeah, I think back then, you know, when you're stepping in to play the Belfast teams, Mid-Ulster was getting beating those trophies year in, year out. And I think when it was one of those moments, I can remember as clear as day, me and Bill looked at each other and I says, let's go and do a team talk. The boys give us our team talk here. And I made sure he was the first person I went after that match to shake hands with and said, enjoy your burger afterwards. But I think that was, for me, that was the turn of the tide for me. That was a moment that you seen supporters coming back, which was a massive thing, which we always spoke about in the change room. We need to get the supporters back. The old guard, let Bill talk about the old guard, but the old guard came in and what we call them the sort of legends corner, and was sort of looked up to those people. So it did. So I think that was the turning for me. When you go to Belfast, and Cumbernack's a really good recognised amateur league club for years history. And when you go there and you beat them in their own backyard, in the manner we did, probably the biggest downfall that day was Gary Topley suffered a really, really horrific injury and was a big blow. So I think it was fitting that the win was for him today. But I never forget looking over to the wee stand, and the stand was going mad and big. All I could see was that small a stand. I think Johnny Power's head filled the whole stand, to tell you the truth.
I have a picture, and I think that's probably one of the best pictures when we scored the goal. I think there's a picture of it, and it is one of, as I think, it is the turn of the tide, as you say. But just memories, that's probably the first memory I think of us really becoming a team. Yeah. And a proper team. I'm not talking about everybody together.
Even the day, you know.
And knowing there's no fear. Go and play places with no fear, and I think that was probably the biggest game, or the first game, which was memorable, I would say.
Yeah. So if I fast forward a bit, that season the team was flying and Justy was still scoring for fun, but as we had mentioned, off the pitch it was a big year for the club, and so of course we had organised for 65 players and supporters to go over to Hamburg in Germany for a 4-day trip in March time in the middle of the season. So what's your memories of the trip?
For me, it was everything that Hanover epitomized about. You know, you had every old guard, young guard, and there wasn't any clicks. You could have sat with 65 different people at 65 different minutes in that trip, and you'd had the same crack.
People like Stephen Douglas maybe come from Hamilton's Ball, Market Hill, and he's sitting with, you know, somebody at 65 that he'd never known, you know, until he came to Hanover. I think the variety of people there, and you know, the blend of people there, you know, it's just exactly what this club's about. It's about the people, you know, for me.
That was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Me and Sargi actually sat beside each other in the plane.
That's right, because he was struggling with the turbulence.
I can remember turning right. We were sitting up near the front of the plane, and I turned around in the plane, and just some of the biggest characters and personalities in the town. Like,
it was just like a plane full of Hanover people.
Going to one place, and you're like, what have we got ourselves in for here? You're sort of going into the unknown, but it was one of the best trips we've had, and everyone will tell you the same. It was absolutely brilliant. And just even remember wee small things. Remember walking out on the last day, we were waiting to get the bus to go to the airport, and Grass was standing outside with a plastic bag and a couple of bottles of cider in it, and just laughing and smiling and cracking away. That's a wee minor thing, but it always stuck in my head. Everyone was just buzzing. Like, it was great trip.
I can remember meeting wine gum sandwiches as well.
Oh, it's hilarious.
Yeah, even getting to the was in the Hanover game we went to as well. Hamburg even. Yeah, it was good to get to the match and stuff as well with everyone.
I don't think, to be honest with you, I've been at a few clubs, and I don't think you would see that at many clubs. And that, to me, that was the one thing that I really, really loved about the place. That it was different in the way that, you know, so many people only hear the name, and we could touch on that quite often. But for me, if anyone hasn't been in the club, they don't see what it's about. And to me, that their trip was just, you know, what Hanover was. And I don't think, if you go along a lot of amateur league clubs or senior clubs, as much as they're tight and all, you wouldn't get 65. Was it mentioned? We had 2 buses, with 2 buses actually. So I had gone there, like, you know, you wouldn't see that, and it was like everyone bought into it. And as I say, it was a quiet trip.
It was.
So when we get back from Germany, then we're up around the top of the table, and we need a big push for promotion, and we're aiming for the league title. So 5 games to play in less than a month to try and make it happen. So what was the running like?
Hectic. We scored plenty of goals, but
We were good scoring them, we weren't good at keeping them out.
I still recall in the change we've given off, we never scored more goals against Sego, and we had scored a bucketful. 13.
And 8-1 as well. I think I was scored 20 goals.
Could have been 20.
Room heads 9.
I could have been 20, but trying to make the point the way, I remember Scott McCullough saying, what more do you want? I said, more goals, because that could decide that why you go up as champions or go up.
I remember actually Hyndes as well, if I'm being honest. I remember him saying, giving half, we maybe won 6 or 7-0 one day, and he came in and fucking gave half. And he said about, that's not good enough. And we were like, we won 7-0. He says, no, but see if us Valley Rangers, they're winning 10-11 because you aren't taking the chances that need to be took. So you're creating the chances and you aren't taking enough. So it was make the 7s, 10, 11s, make the 3s, 4s and 5s. And it was just, again, driving standards. So whatever was good wasn't good enough. And that was, we were, at that stage we knew, but I think we knew as well, as a group, we knew that would more in us.
Shorty, you actually didn't play really in the running because you were injured. What was your injury, or what was the reason you weren't playing?
Yeah, I had a bit of a mishap and I got my jaw broke at that season. So I was out for, I think it was 3 or 4 months. To be totally honest, I'd actually come back after and played, and I was absolutely terrible. I don't know whether it was the injury or what the crack was, but I remember we played Market Hill away one day, and Bill actually phoned me. I think I let one in from about 30 yards, and Bill phoned me straight after the match, to be fair to him. And he said to me, Shorty, I think I'm going to have to maybe drop you for a couple of weeks. So fair play to him, he phoned me and told me himself, like, but Joel had come in then, and he had done really, really well. So maybe a bit of time out done me a bit of favour, or a few favours.
I think too in this season, and especially in the running, you had mentioned about signing Shorty and how much of an important player he was for us, but he actually missed nearly all of this through injury, and we had big young
Joel come in. Joel's kicking it on. Like, Joel was only a kid, like, he was 15. He was only about 16. And he done a great job, you know. He just sort of sprouted, but his confidence built up, and even building up to the final days, where to the volley and all that there, he really stood up to be counted, you know, but a lot of people did.
That season we only conceded in total 27 goals. I think Joel kept 11 clean sheets.
Well, see, there's
Big Jeff was in, wasn't he?
Yep.
Another thing where it comes in, where set pieces we weren't conceding from, it goes back to the clipboard. How we defend set pieces, how we do, you know, we were maybe conceding or bombing forward.
Good near too, but Jeff.
Yeah.
We weren't conceding as many goals in that fashion. So,
and again, I think you touched on it about, you know, numbers in the coaching staff. that was a big progression to have 3, because I remember at the start of the season that their year was sort of, Jeff was one of these ones, he headed the ball, but he wanted to go in the midfield and get after his header, and then after the pass he wanted to go to centre forward. And them two were able to coach away from the sidelines, and I remember just saying, listen, I'm going to go down and stand with Jeff here. And we things like that there, I wouldn't have been able to done if them two weren't there, and vice versa. So I remember going down every time Jeff headed the ball and he went for a couple of shots, get back, and he'll tell you it was like just a head back, and he was a big player for us that year.
His strength,
His
strength was defending.
He was
His strength was defending, but Hyndes called him real because Jeff thought he'd showing that he wasn't.
I'm still on my phone is real.
Honestly, I'm not sure. There's no better header of the ball that I've seen in my life. But his strength was defending, and that was it. But you had to near enough show him his strength was defending the fact, and it was just that thing where he had and he just wanted to go forward. And I remember the game. I think it was pre-season.
It was pre-season.
And Hyndes just stood in the line, just Jeff.
And again, to be fair to Alexa Jeff, everyone used to say to us, "You'll never get Jeff. I'll not listen to you." And that he did. There's so many wee stories that people who they thought wouldn't buy into this all bought into it, because the change room was really tight. And I'd have to say, what you're just started on those 5 games, the Hanover trip probably pushed us on tighter to push on for the league when we came back.
So then, I'm not sure if it was the last game of the season, but definitely one of the last games. It was the Valley Rangers then, 4-0 away, and sort of knowing then that we were getting promoted. They were also at the top of the table with us, so it was a big win. So tell us a bit about that game as well then.
Justy was sent off for being fouled, and they were delighted. They were thinking, us had done dusted here. We've got rid of Bradley. Team played well. Young Lappin scored. Got the
Lappin scored 2. Woods scored 2.
Stephen Woods played up front.
Stephen Woods played. He was outstanding.
Lappin gets sent off as well.
No, Justy
gets sent off coming off for Lappin. I think it was during the summers. It was so stupid. It was so stupid.
No, he had been fouled and he was being targeted. But as a group, the whole team that day were outstanding. Everybody. Well, as they were all season, Justy was the main goal scorer.
So we only dropped 11 points that season, and even though we beat Valley Rangers 4-0, sort of, last day or the nearly last day, we managed to get beaten on goal difference, even though we had a goal difference of plus 82.
Back to your point.
Back to the
point. 7 should be 9.
So we had got confirmation then of our promotion. So yes, missed out in the league, but by all accounts and purposes, a really good season. Bill, then you then decided to announce your retirement. So what was your thinking behind this, or when did you decide?
Well, as I say, I didn't apply for the first team job or anything else in the first place. When I come in, then when Hyndes come on board, and my thinking was, them boys can take it that step further. I've done but I was delighted to get there the 50th year, get promotion back to where the club should be. Went through that transition period, them boys were going to take it that step further. Hyndes says it starts off with the boards, everybody progresses on that bit. I had informed these boys before I informed anybody else, and then decided to pack it in, and had no problems with it. You know what I mean? I was quite happy for them boys to take it on.
Did you tell the players sort of before the end of the season? Yep. You did?
Well, I'd said them, yes. On my last match, I think the last match was on my birthday down at Bourneville with 1-5. Because that's what I asked them for a birthday present. 3 points.
So what was it like to be about the club at this period of time?
Being about the club, that was an exciting year for the club, between the three of us. Probably more than anyone know what it means at this club. We've been about the club all our lives. So at that stage, on a personal note, I was playing in the first team, and, it meant a lot to me that day at Valley to help us get promoted. And, you could see the club was going from strength to strength. We had the right people in place on and off the pitch. It was, I know personally from my dad being secretary, the club was probably in dire straits for a few years before it. And to see, 65 people on those steps going to Hamburg for the trip to Germany, those wee memories probably mean it more than being on the pitch and winning on the pitch, you know. So on a personal note, that year was massive, and I think, you know, the trip to Germany and the dinner epitomised everything that season, and, you know, it sort of laid the platform for everything that was to come in the years to follow.
Obviously, Smoko had come in, and he brought Andy and Bunty along to help him. And not only that, but then with Bill and Hyndes and Crowe coming into the first over them years, it obviously brought in players to strengthen there as well, and that could only benefit the seconds, because there's no doubt about it, there's players playing for the seconds, that team, that could have played for any other first team in the country, which speaks volumes obviously for our first team.
Yeah, you could feel it building, like as you say. I think I always go back to obviously Hyndes, like, but see when Bill came, when Bill was managing the seconds, like, you know how good he was for us, like, because for a few years the second team was, you didn't know who you were playing with.
It was through together.
It was through together. You didn't know, you were going down the changing room, you were saying, you know, I wonder who's playing this week. You didn't know, sometimes there were people walking and you didn't even know their name.
Yeah.
Bill came in and took the seconds, and obviously with his connections he got a few in, and I know on a personal level, like, he was brilliant for me. So he was he actually converted me to centre half, so he was at the time. But you could feel the building then, like.
So then at that time, both teams were getting stronger, and everybody sort of going out together as well, and it felt like a big group of mates. Is that how you felt it was as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've said this many times, but around that time, like, it was, if you came into the club after a match, you know, if you had no plans, absolutely no plans about going out that night, you're in the club 5 minutes and you were going out. And I was over the two teams.
Usually to the Belmont.
And it was over the two teams at the time, you know, it wasn't just...
Yeah, it wasn't a case of, like, you know, the first were all mates and the seconds were all mates.
Yeah.
We're all mates,
No.
you know, and even if the first didn't have a match, we were all there, and vice versa. And obviously that played a big part in the success of both
The
teams.
two teams,
you know.
yeah.
It was definitely a one club mantle then, if you want to put it. You know, like, there was really no divide. The first and seconds trained together both nights. The quality of player across both teams, you know, and again with everyone running about and socialising together, as Reid said, you could have been no plans and you were coming into a club, and next thing you'd maybe 20 boys going to the Belmont, and then, you know, it meant everything at that time.
So then, Hyndes, you then got asked to take on the role. So how did that come about? Was that really through Bill, or was that more through the committee and Aussie?
Again, it was something I hadn't thought about. I think we had actually started playing golf, took up the golf a wee bit more, and I think it was actually getting to the stage where you were out longer with the golf than you were with the football, so I had to get back to the football. But Bill had told us, and we sort of knew, it was in his heart what he was doing. But even what Louis told us, we weren't sitting thinking we're the next ones, or we're going to do it, or this, that and the other. And then the Saturday that had happened, in typical Hanover tradition, you walk in, you were putting the stuff, the kit bags and all away, and you're called in the committee room, and Rodzo says, you're taking the first team job, by the way, and you manager now. Am I? So you sort of walk out and goes, right,
No
okay, you had no choice. And again, I think what Bill said, you know, when he was asked to do it, you want to do it for the benefit of the club. It certainly wasn't for Stephen Hyndes as taking the job. That's for sure. It was for, like, right, the club's going a wee bit here, you know, who else comes in? You know what I mean? We knew the club well. I knew I would have a good right hand man in Dean. And, you know, it was one of those moments you just sort of say, right, okay. And I remember just walking in the house and Caroline says, no.
Then you also brought in somebody else then, so decided to bring in Glenn McCullough and announced this then at the 50th anniversary dinner as well.
Yeah, well, Glenn had been managing Sego.
Yeah.
And probably had a rough time, to be fair, when he was managing Sego, and he was doing it on his own, to be fair. So, again, Bill says you need 3s minimum, so it was, and you'll find out, but we went to 4 as well. But Glenn was a no-brainer for us. Like, he had that wee bit of difference, you know, sparked his character and different
Here's
from me and
there,
him.
one things.
You know, Dean liked to be loved by everyone. I didn't care. And Glenn just, like, probably didn't give a crap about anyone. Being truthful, so I had a good mixture. I had a good blend. That was a no-brainer to bring Glenn in.
So although leading on then to the 50th dinner, so although we missed out in the league trophy by goal difference, it was great to be able to go to the dinner knowing that we'd been finally promoted back into Intermediate A, and it really gave what was already a big occasion a bit of an extra appeal and extra excitement. So what's your memories of the 50th anniversary dinner, the event?
My memories, I wasn't getting up to talk. Too emotional. Hey, let your man here do it.
That was probably your first big event as a
He was quite happy. It's okay that the dinners in the all years, you know, you're doing it. I've done it with the second team, done it with the first team. But in the Seagull, it was because maybe I was retiring now, so that's too much. Didn't bother. I went out and I spoke to Patrick Van Doort out in the hall. Hyndes done a lot of the awards, and I was quite happy out there. I could just sit with my vodka and Coke.
So there was over 200 people at that dinner, so any wonder you didn't want to get up and speak. The prize winners, no-brainer really for the first team. Justy Bradley, 51 goals, top goal scorer, player of the year, players player of the year, supporters player of the year.
I think that doesn't show how good the all players were either.
That's right, that's correct.
He was just, I don't think he'll say, like, I think he scored 51, I think it was 33 games or something. It was unheard of us, but the other players around him were so good.
And he wasn't doing it on his own.
I think it's worth, I know we've mentioned him already too, but Joel Armstrong, he got Young Player of the Year too, so a bit of recognition for, you know, coming up from the seconds, coming in as a young fella and being able to finish the season out so well.
Younger, I got that as well.
Exactly.
It was some lifting getting it all from the table out into the cars after. Yeah, it was a great experience, and I have to admit, I didn't actually realise how big of a night it was going to be. I actually didn't realise I was going to win anything apart from top goal scorer, but yeah, it was an absolute a privilege to be there on the 50th year, and yes, something I'll never forget.
Right, so keeping with the 50th anniversary season and the I suppose the celebration, so the special guest at the 50th anniversary dinner was Warren Feeney, who was the Linfield manager at the time. So how did that come about?
I actually was doing a lot of the chasing. We actually tried to get Jimmy Nicol.
That's right.
And Jimmy Nicol couldn't come. Jimmy Nicol because of the connection with Guffer and stuff. So I had rang him. I think he was manager of Cowdenbeath. And he couldn't come because of, they were maybe in a Scottish playoff or something. It was something, it ended up Jimmy Nicol couldn't come. And then obviously we wanted somebody with a bit, obviously Northern Irish connection, whatever. And Fino came up, I think we maybe made connection through Darren Winter. Maybe.
Darren Winter and him would have been friendly. And then actually on the day of it, Warren Feeney's very friendly with good mates with Harry Kuehl. And Harry Kuehl was over doing his B licence, you know, his coaching. And right up until the last minute, then he was supposed to come to the event. So that would have been an odd coup, but they ended up he couldn't come then. I think he went on, travelled on home or whatever. But yeah, Fino came and good night.
I think he was good as well. To be honest, he obviously knew a bit about the club, bought into what we were about, and helped us in as well with the Linfield thing. What we get on to, he was, you know, he was more than helpful, and he wanted to do it. It wasn't somebody you had to go and chase. He wanted to do it, and he didn't want much for her doing it like other people would maybe want. He just wanted to be there and wanted to be part of it.
So the dinner was at the end of May, and then on the 4th of August we actually had Warren Feeney's Linfield team down to Brownstown to play a friendly against Hanover. So was this agreed at the dinner, or how did this come about?
I was actually, Caroline was pregnant with Amy at the time, so I was at the dinner by myself. Everyone else was sitting obviously with their wives and girlfriends and stuff like that there. So at my table, I was sitting with him and Justy Bradley happened to be at the table, so sitting next to him, and I just remember the trophies were coming. I was like, here, Justy down with an odd trophy. And then the next thing was announced, 51 goals, did you say? And Fino turns around to me and he says, 51 goals, Hyndes. He says, that's some going. He says, mate, I've never seen a goal score like it. You know, natural ability, but no interest in anything. And he says, would you mind if I get a look at him? He said, listen, there's not a chance that man will move. But he says, tell you what, we'll give you a friendly. Now, when big teams like that over in this country tell you they'll give a friendly, you're taking it with a pinch of salt. I certainly wasn't thinking he was coming through with. And then obviously got the phone call to say, listen, we'll go with a pre-season friendly down there, which surprised us all, and to be fair to him, showed a bit of honesty on his part. So that's how the friendly came about.
For us, a club, a promotional thing as well. You know, the night it was a I think it was a real good warm summer's night in August, and there was a great crowd and stuff. It was really good. It was a good way to probably end all those 50th celebrations. Hamburg, the dinner, the Linfield game, and I think it was just probably the icing on the cake. And they'd obviously had, Linfield's the biggest club in this country, no matter what what he said, in my opinion. And it was a coup for us.
So we were beaten 3-1, and of course, in typical fashion, Justy scored the goal. So, Hyndes, do you want to tell us the story about Justy being asked to sign for Linfield?
So we came back again because it was Linfield, as Dean says. We came back and put the tea and sandwiches and stuff on and done it right. And again, Fino was up and Justy picked the ball up just in front of our dugout, glided past a couple and stuck the ball in the bottom. He just stuck the ball in the bottom corner in one of those goals and didn't play well, to be honest with you. That was probably the only thing he done, but the goal did stand out. And then up here again, he says, listen, I was serious what I said there, would you bring him down? So at the time, I think Andy Waterworth was definitely one of the strikers. Because I remember telling Andy Waterworth on one of our courses out there story, but long story short, he was sort of at me, would you get him down? And I says, I can't because my commitment's here. And then we tied in with Chris Haggerty was at Linfield at the time, and he knew Chris Haggerty, and then he was coming past, Dungannon direction, so Justy didn't drive at the time. So I phoned Justy and said, listen, can't take this opportunity. Linfield doesn't come calling. Hesitant, this, that, and the other. He says, let me think about it. He says, Haggerty, you've grew up with Haggerty. We played with him as a kid and stuff like that there. So we left it with him for a couple of nights, and Fino was back on the me and all. He said, listen, we want him down. We're going to get him straight into the first team. We're going to get him straight in training with the strikers, Andy Waterworth. Can't remember. There was a couple other really good strikers, but they were taking them separate for a couple of nights. We'll get him down.
Paul Smith.
Paul Smith, actually, he's now QPR.
Paul Smith, because in that game,
He was outstanding.
He
was brilliant. So it went from there, and the next thing was we're coming down. We're playing St. Patrick. Justy, in typical fashion, was late as usual and came waltzing down the hill with a baseball hat on back to front. And the next thing he says, here, can I have a word with you, Hyndes? So I thought, right, he's going to say, I'll take a wee chance here, I'll go. He turns around and he says, listen, I've spoke to the missus here. He says, not for me. Linfield's not for me. He says, just tell him, you give him a story. I'm like, you serious? And he goes, yeah, serious. So the ironic thing was that Warren had arranged to phone me on the Tuesday night with the answer. And Bradley went out and scored a hat trick that you'll probably...
Scored a scissor kick volley, if I remember right. It was, like, I'm not saying from the back, it was one of them, like a Van Basten one, the diagonal ball, and he made like a scissor kick volley, and I'm just looking around me, he just says, what am I going to tell us?
That's what I was going. I was probably more worried about how I'm going to announce it to Fino. So again, Fino phones me and he says, listen, I've told you this kid's just not, it's just you see these things happen, like. And as much of a natural goal scorer and as good a player as he was, he just didn't have that he wanted. He was at home here too. I think he knew that as well. And the next thing, Fino says, what was his final? I said, listen, no. He says, how'd he do today anyway? And I was like, please don't ask that one. Describe the goals. And he goes, for frig's sake. But listen, I think Warren Feeney's been around a long time. I've seen players like that too. But the funny story, Mr. Bradley, as usual. Like,
he got a song out of it anyway.
So my side of the story, I didn't understand. I didn't realise that Feeney was down watching, whoever he was watching. But yeah, we played Linfield. We got beat 3-1. So I was actually on a family holiday. Had to come back up the road for it, which I was happy enough about because it was a big game. I got into bed that night, and I have a friend who plays for Linfield. I got a message off him, Christopher Haggerty, and he says the manager's interested in you. Would you be interested in coming down? At that point, I was laying in bed going, what is happening here? This is absolutely crazy. It's Linfield, one of the biggest teams in the country. So yeah, I think it was the next night I got back to him and I said, I don't know, mate, I'm not quite sure yet. Just with other commitments and stuff, and apparently they were training 3 nights a week, and in the match on Saturday, it was just going to be too much. So
crazy.
Kindly rejected the offer.
You're probably one of the only people that's turned down Linfield coming in for them to be
fair. It wasn't until, about a month ago, I'd heard a story that Feeney and my manager at the time, Stephen Hyndes, had actually been in communication talking, which I wasn't aware of. Otherwise I would have joined. But Yeah, no, it's to hear feedback like that, and for someone the likes of a Linfield manager to be phoning up and asking how I done the Saturday after, is to hear those comments is absolutely amazing.
So that season then, Hyndes, whenever you come in as manager, signings then at the beginning of that year, Big Rooney, Jamie Rooney, Regan, Willie Kerr, and also getting Shorty back from injury too. So what was the dynamic of signing players? Like, were you keeping an eye on them, or who was approaching them, or how did you know?
Again, anyone knows me and him, I think it was like, as we all said, and we're like a married couple. We're never out of each other's pockets. We're always trying to push those boundaries with lists galore. We live beside each other. Every night it was like making lists, targets, who's the best players. And we never wanted to sign 6 or 7 players each year. It was always, can we nip in all 1 or 2? And the 1 or 2 had to be better than what we had. That was our motto. And the Rooney one was a big golf. We played golf with Rooney, and Rooney knocked about with Shorty and toppers and stuff like that there. And I remember we'd been down in Carton House playing golf one year, and of course out and drank afterwards. And it was like, I have the picture on my phone of saying, right, Rooney, you're definitely going to sign this year, because he was a Tandriggy and he won everything at Tandriggy, and Tandriggy were one of the big clubs in Mid-Ulster back then, still are. And that day I remember it was like on a beer mat or something, and the picture of me, him signing, and to be fair to Rooney, he stuck it. Now to get him was, I think that would have been a massive, massive coup for any other player looking to say will or won't it, because Hanover was a closed shop. It's a very wee closed, thing before we all came in. It was like, I don't know, will I fit in there? Like, because people, again, it goes back to what I said at the start. Before you come into the club, it's that perception. You come into the club and people don't want to leave because it's that friendly and people have your back and stuff like that there. But Rooney was the one. Rooney was a big one, because
I think Rooney's up there with Scott McCullough, Justy Bradley for me. I had Scott McCullough, probably the first one with Bill, was a statement because of the level we knew he could go back to.
Mm-hmm.
Justy could have done anything he wanted. Maybe he didn't want it. That's the problem. Rooney for me was in terms of Mid-Ulster football. I don't think there's many better players
or decorated
players. He won everything, and I think his consistency. He maybe talk about a game later on, but he was 7, 8 out of 10 every single game. He never really had a bad game.
Yeah.
So then you're back playing Intermediate A. So it had been 6 seasons in Intermediate B, and it's very hard league to get out of, and it took us a long time to build that momentum. So how did you find it playing in Intermediate A, and was it a tougher level of opponent?
Again, it goes back to, if you have the ability, I actually think it's easier going up the levels, and we knew we had ability in our team, like so we did. So, when we stepped up there, Intermediate B was really, really hard to get out of, as you said, and we always felt, and not only us, any team in Intermediate B, if they felt the winners of Intermediate B, because it was that strong, should be finishing mid-table or higher. So that was what I said. The expectancy probably was for us to go and have a rattle at it, and probably my negativity was like, the fear of what happens if we don't. But no, it straight away I felt that was the place, that their team needed to be.
The top 3 teams that year were the promoted teams out of Intermediate B the previous 2 seasons. So Nuri won it.
Yep.
Volley back, and we came third.
We were third, yeah.
But so Nuri had went up the previous year, won it, and us and Volley, so who were the promoted teams the previous season, came second and third. So it shows you, and even going into Intermediate A now, most of the teams that were in Intermediate B are now the top teams in Mid-Ulster nowadays.
So you mentioned Nuri there. So Nuri, in my memory, is a team, even though they only really started back up in 2012, their whole time in Intermediate B and then in Intermediate A, it seems like we were playing them a lot and we had a really good rivalry with them. So what are your memories of some of those matches, of the Nuri matches?
Very good memories. Like we as you said, it was frightening the amount of times we played each other, and that's where we wanted to play. Let's make no mistake about it. We didn't want to play against the wee teams. We actually thrived going up to the bigger teams, and because we knew we'd bring a crowd and expectations and stuff like that there. But there was probably a few standout ones. The one I think was the night before my wedding, 2013.
Were you still manager then?
Bill was the manager, and Skippy
Oh,
scored.
Adam Salfo.
I set himself up, but with good dig dongs, because they were a professional outfit. You know, we were Hanover going to what you call as an Irish League.
They had
league
lads that
team.
was playing then, played right through the Irish
I
League.
think I used to like the always played us on a Friday night. There were always Friday night games on the lights. I probably come from an Ulster football.
Well, to be fair, they asked us, and we had the choice, but
Uh-huh.
most teams would have said no. We'll go Saturday. We wanted to
We
go to
wanted,
the big
but
lights.
it was different for us too. It was it was a feel of a football match, and the conditions weren't always great either. Like down there, the pitch wasn't always great, but probably showed us at times too. But we were good sometimes down there. It would give them real good competitive matches.
Good cup game. Shorty made a couple of brilliant saves. A cup game, penalty shootout.
One each would drew down there with them and we beat them 1-0. But the 1-0 one I remember really well because we went out after. And I think we were in the Jamsons was after,
May win the next
Europe
day.
won the next day, and it was as I said, Skippy scored the goal, 1-0, beat them up there, and it was probably backs the wall for 80 minutes of it, and got them on the counter.
The 1-1 game you mentioned there, Dean, that was a good game, and there was a really good goal in that game too. I can remember Scott crossing the ball in for Justy. He scored
Header.
Back post.
Actually, funny enough, watched that there not so long ago. I think Lappin had sent me it, so it was. So I know it. Good ding dongs with them.
Even going up to Nuri, and obviously their ground and setup was Irish League
Yeah, it was
standard, so
brilliant.
it was
Yeah.
good to get up there
Really good.
and play. But some great games in the past with them, and some team as well, didn't they? So a lot of their players that played in B, I think, continued with intermediate A and progression into the Irish League too, and are still possibly playing. So great teams back then, great rivalry.
I think there's a good photo of Jeff Crowe and their striker too. Which
Yes.
probably sums up a good
Big
rivalry
Mullen,
too.
was it? Head to head, yeah.
Jeff will show it to you, I'm sure, if you ask him to.
He says he still talks to him on Facebook and stuff.
It was his profile picture on Facebook.
Ah,
I
that's
think,
right.
for about 3 years.
Yeah. But it's good that they still, we can see some of them guys and still chat to them about the rivalry back in the day. Like,
So as you said there too, so we finished third that season, first season back in Intermediate A, moving then into the next season, 2016-17, added a few more players then, so Matty Brown, Neil Taylor, John Whitten, Stevie McClellan starting to appear in the team again then. So one of the most standout things really of that season was the Intermediate Cup run. So can you tell us anything about that?
I
You
think
wanna
just
lead up?
one person you said there, Steve McClelland. Bill signed Steve McClelland, and he never cut the mustard the first time, but he was really unfit. He had a bad injury. Went away, played for Hill Street. When we signed him the second time, it was actually Bunty came to us and says you need to sign him. He came from Hill Street as the player of the year, and for me, again, you're talking about statement saying Steve McClelland was brilliant for us.
I remember saying Stephen McClellan that second time, and the word Stevie said to me was, he says, what's going to entice me to go here? We're winning everything for Hill Street. He says, can we win trophies? And I said, well, listen, it'll not be for the want of trying. That was the words. I says, we will do everything in our power to win trophies, and obviously he comes and he wins the 4. But that was the only thing he asked me, and I'd have to say for all the boys were local. For him to come and the dedication he showed. Never missed training, was first to training, drove standards. He's up there again. You could go through them all, what they've done. But for me, Stephen McClellan was a massive, massive part of what we've done.
So back to the Intermediate Cup run then. So up to Windsor then for the quarter-final draw. So what was that experience like?
Good, yeah. But I think the whole thing was, again, progression as a club. We'd never really probably been to those sort of events, and the club had never went that far in the Intermediate Cup in the history, so it was breaking new ground. I think as we progressed through the Intermediate Cup, we beat a few good teams. I actually remember one match just because of a player. Daniel Larmer played for Carrick reserves against us, and Daniel Larmer now plays in the Irish League, has a great career, but he was exceptional. I think he was only maybe 15, 16 back then.
That's the one I picked out, said would make it.
Straight away, I remember. But the quarter-final, Ards Rangers, the preparation that we've done with, this is probably shows you where we do go into a wee bit of OCD, and we're probably, me and him are very alike. I remember we got a match report off Brandy Grimes on Ards Rangers, and they had been very successful. They had actually won the Intermediate Cup in previous seasons, and they were a top amateur league club, one top team. Lee Forsyth, the manager, and we went and watched them. We had a free week. Maybe 5-6 players went up as well. So that was again the players band into things, and we went up and watched them. And Brandy Grimes gave us a match report. Says to play 4-4-2. They go early to the wingers, and the wingers were very, very good. And we went and watched them, and it was exactly how they played. And we set up the basic counter that. And I think in the day we played them, our two fullbacks got joint man of the match.
Yep.
So that Ards Rangers game, there's a massive crowd at that game. We won it 4-2 on penalties. Nathan White, Frank, he was in nets.
Scott McCullough.
Scott scored the winner, yeah. Then on to the big sort of occasion for that year. It was the semi-final versus Limavady United at Mayola Park. So that was on a Wednesday night. Another massive crowd Wednesday night, and we took 2 full buses, and there was a lot of cars went up. So what are your thoughts from that night, or your memories from that night?
Bittersweet, probably. Great to see Hanover in that stage. Again, what he was talking about, that's what probably at that stage we're pushing boundaries again by going and watching teams. And I remember we drove up to Limavady. Limavady played, and people were sitting going, "You boys are mad in the head." Like, you know what he's going up for. But then we were coming back with literally done a team meeting in here, and we started doing things like that there, and putting on the board, whoever's playing against him, this is what the way he turns and stuff like that. And the boys are going like banning all this detail again, and again on the night, to see 2 buses come up from Hanover was unbelievable, to say the least. And again, we start off, we went 1-0 up. We went 1-0 up that game, so it did. And Limavady were, again, like this is the wee Hanover going on the big stage. And I've probably rewind one point that was never mentioned, and I always said I would mention this if I was ever asked. I remember taking over, and the first thing, a lot of boys who I knew, friends, whatever it was, they laughed at me. It was like taking over Hanover, stuff like that. They're their club, they'll never go anywhere. And I remember saying things like that to Dean, and he knows what I'm like. And he's just like, I'm not going to bite this here, but I tell you what, thank you very much for the motivation, because I want to drive this on. And that was one of the big things that drove us on. So to get the club to Windsor for the first time for draws was like those wee bits of probably sticking 2 fingers back up at a lot of people, if I'm being honest with you. And then to see us on the big stage against Limavady. After we scored the goal, I probably could talk for an hour about it. Young Mark Dillon was his first refereeing thing in top flight, and the red mist went him. Like Big Rooney, as we say, the most honest player you'll see in a football pitch, would never shout back at a player.
Yellow card all day long now.
Yellow card, and he couldn't wait. He run over in the whole mist of things and just produced the red. And from there, you were never beating Limavady with 10 men.
So we had to play for over an hour with 10 men. Ended up getting beat 5-2 then.
Yeah.
Right, so did this give the players a bit of a taste of success, like someone so close to something big? Like, what really was the feeling in the camp then?
100%. I think that was a season that, when we weren't in the league, so we weren't, and was sort of, again, the way we would have structured things at the time was there was too many trophies in Mid-Ulster football. There still is, and we would have turned around and said, listen, what is our priorities here? You don't always get your priorities, but that year we had to go all in. Intermediate Cup, it was history for the club to get that there level and stuff like that there, but because it affected our league form greatly, like, so it did. So from then, the players, to me, once they seen that was when you're stepping out in the semi-final of one of the biggest amateur cup at that level, the players were just, there was euphoria, and they wanted to get back at it and go for more, like, so dedication became higher from them all. That's one thing we noticed.
So a team that was winning silverware, I suppose, at the club at this time was the reserves. So the reserves were flying under Smoko. They had won the O'Hara Cup in 2016, and they'd won the league unbeaten in 2017. So how did this impact the club as well?
You would have probably watched the
bit
of seconds at that stage, bro.
I watched plenty of it, but I say again, the progression of the seconds comes from the progression of the firsts. Players filtering down, still quite prepared to play for the club, quite prepared to move up when needed. Smoko, and I think Bunty was in there. Like, long did Bunty play for this club? at a good level. Bunty's a cracking player.
Yeah.
And he was going in there with young lads in the seconds.
You had players
And
that
they listened to
could have probably easily went and played for another club at that stage, you know, where we had maybe moved and not through, maybe moved them on, you know, or the squad, the first team squad had progressed, and maybe they were coming to the end. Jeff, Bunty, instead of moving on, they went and played for the second.
Aye.
But we had always the opportunity that if we wanted to dip it, like, you could probably have took 5 or 6 out of it, you know, that could have easily come in and done you a job. Like, we always used to say that our seconds would probably have won Intermediate B at that stage. I'm not exaggerating. They were that strong, and we had maybe 40 good players at the club.
So how did you win the O'Hara Cup?
Well, it was just obviously transcend from obviously Smoko and Andy and Bunty coming in. There was just a lot more even professionalism around the seconds. First season probably they came in, maybe it was a mid-table finish. Next year we pushed on up again, but yeah, we just felt more of a confidence growing, and
With a really good mix in the squad as well.
Yeah.
A lot of experienced boys. You had obviously Robbie Gass and Bunty at that stage.
yeah, Big Jeff,
Big Jeff.
Jason,
yeah,
Stephen
yeah,
played
yeah.
that year for us too, like.
Yeah, and then you had obviously younger ones as well, like Tom C, myself, your
My bro was
your
even
wee
in the
bro
squad
was
that
even in
night.
the squad. So it was a real mix at that stage. I can't really remember too much about the lead up. You know,
The lead up, I remember like one of the biggest players in the lead up was probably Steely Long actually.
yeah,
Yeah, he was smashing.
he was brilliant.
Yeah.
That season.
And then obviously the cup final. It was the first cup final we had been in since obviously 2010, and as up to Hydro the night before, I could barely sleep, you know. And we got onto the pitch. They had brought a few first teamers in. We didn't know really what team we were going to be facing
No.
that night, like, and it was tough. You know, they over the course of
They were a real
90 minutes,
physical side.
110, 120, whatever it may be, they were probably the better side, but we had to dig in, and obviously the match actually finished 0-0, which was hard to believe. And then it came to the penalties, and five base had stepped up for us. You know, there was absolutely no doubt, like, you know, so
We won 5-4.
we won 5-4. I think we scored all 5, did we?
So Wayne, you wore a t-shirt with Scotty's face on it underneath your playing kit, but you didn't score during the match, so you didn't get to take it off.
No.
But what was the story behind this top?
Just because of who he was, really. Throughout the years, just me growing up in here, you know, there's been a lot of big characters, Scotty and Grass and Ridgel and stuff, but obviously with Scotty passing, it just felt like it was the right way to show everyone that you know we're still thinking about him.
So you carried this winning form then into the next season and went the whole league season unbeaten. So 16 wins and 2 draws out of 18 matches. Who were the big players for you that season?
Willie Kerr.
Willie Kerr was a big one.
A lot of goals that year.
Yeah, he was unplayable at times for us, I thought. And when he first came down, I'll be honest, I didn't really know a whole lot about him. I think he came down as a first team player.
Hyndes and Crowe had signed him as a first team player, but then I don't think he really kicked on, obviously because of Justy. And then we ended up getting him in the seconds, and then you obviously had the likes of Joel Richardson and stuff that year, and Big Jeff. You know, we really had a close knit group that year, and not the season itself. I don't really remember too much about. It's more maybe the last, the last couple of league games. I think I remember the first time really realizing we have a opportunity to do something here was Hill Street at home. We played them midweek. And I remember winning that match and thinking we have an opportunity here to go and win the league. And I think Smoko and Bunty like pushed sort of standards that year, and you know sort of took it to another level, like to make sure guys were. He probably fed off the first team. He probably fed off Hyndes and Crowe and driving standards. So yeah.
So the last game then against Hyndes to lift the trophy. It was a winner takes all game. And they're obviously big local rivals, especially for you, Wayne. So what's your memory of that game?
Well, it's probably one of my lowest moments is not being able to feature in that match because I broke my foot in the semi-final of the O'Hara Cup maybe 2 weeks before it.
You were there on crutches though?
I was there on crutches, and I was still as nervous as the rest of the guys, obviously in the change room with them, and the match itself was edgy. We needed to beat them.
Yeah, we needed to win to win the league.
We needed to win the league. And they were going for the league as well, which obviously meant there was going to be winner takes all. It was going to be hot and heavy. And their match was called off that day, and they never named their subs. And then they ended up naming four first teamers. And the only first teamer we had no first match, but the only one we drafted him was Sargi.
Sargi was the only first team. I remember the night before, Hyndes phoning me, and he was all, listen, I've went to the Mid-Ulster here, I've got the trophy and all sorted here, so if you win the league, it's down to the pitch. And I remember thinking to tell the boys this or not, and I don't think I actually ever did say to any of the boys. And I remember going out for the warm-up, and Big Jeff, obviously being the big player and character he is, he was quiet, he was just not normal Jeff.
Yeah.
And next thing he comes, he said, no, I'm no good here. I'm not going to be able to play. And to lose a player of Jeff's calibre, like
massive,
like in the warm-up. And I always remember Wilsey coming in. He came in and started ahead of him. And with Wilsey at that time, you didn't know what you were going to get. Wilsey was nervous.
Yeah.
And I remember Wilsey coming in, and he was absolutely brilliant that day. And I remember I hit the bar, I think, from about 2 yards to put us 1-0 up.
Forgot about that.
Absolute sitter I missed. And it was in my head the rest of the match. And then I think it was quite fitting that, Barry Harrison stepped up and scored the winner that day.
Yeah. If there's one way to rate that match, that's the way you had wrote it, like. No better man.
And not only that, but Bunty was the one that crossed it to him.
Yeah, that's right.
Jason came off injured. I think Bunty came on with maybe about 20 minutes to go. And he put the ball across. But it was funny, like just before we had scored, like the fans over at the far side were all trying to gee up the players, and Straw was shouting on, like, come on. And with that, he just turned around and goes, just calm down. And within 30 seconds, he just had the ball into the net, like. And the crutches that they spoke about, they're probably still sticking in the ceiling at Tandy Social Club, because that's where you seen the goal going in.
What was it like playing with your Dan the seconds back then?
It was good. Obviously, not many players get to play with their dad, throughout their career. I played one for a long time. And the year before we won the league, the year we won the cup, me and him were going for top goal scorer right up until I got injured, maybe 3 matches before the end. And I was on 21, I think he was on 23. And so it was competitive that season too. Like, we were fighting over who was taking penalties and stuff, but on an overall note, it was good. We're both very similar minded, let's say, when it comes to certain things on the pitch, like. Obviously it's been a privilege, really, like, probably at the time when I was playing, I never probably told him that.
So the first team finally got their silverware the next season then, after seeing their reserves be so successful, and they didn't even have to wait until the end of the year. So we won a historic Bob Radcliffe Cup in a Boxing Day final at Stanmore Park, and also picked up the Premier Cup a week later. So how did that season start?
I think good. We obviously went on a good run. I think throughout the season we just kept building and the momentum built. And again, what we were talking about previously, players buying into things. I don't think we could have asked for a better group of players, but we went, I think the season before from Reid, we'd talked about this with maybe 2021, we class as first team players, and we thought with too many, because we were trying to keep everybody happy and we were rotating, and it probably didn't help us. But then that year, if I'm right, with 17 first team players, and we went a smaller squad.
I think it's worth noting that year that we actually lost Scott McCullough to Loughgall before the beginning of that season. So obviously a big loss, but we couldn't hold him back. But that year then we also brought in Jake Richardson, Whitey and Dean Heasley.
Big signings.
Yeah, well, Jake and Whitey for me that season, I think they were the difference in us moving up another notch. So they were, when they came into the change rooms, it was big players coming. We were now attracting players from higher level. For me that was a big one, and I remember them two boys signing. We actually signed them in the back of the yard Super Value one night, so I did. But them two came into the change rooms, and from there the levels just went up again.
RG, can you tell me anything about the Bob Radcliffe Cup run?
Yeah, so with the Radcliffe, I just said the semi final just stands out for me. So I can't remember the lead up to it. Can you guys?
Mine, the game before we played, was it, who did we play before?
5 Mile Town.
5 Mile Town, aye. So, can mind that one, the biggest one coming into the semi-final. I can remember probably that was our first team meeting, big team meeting.
Yeah.
We come in and we thought it was just going to be short and sweet, but Hyndes and Dean and Glenn, there was a clipboard, and I think there was maybe
that every
sheets on it. Like.
Every player, and what their sort of attributes were, and who they were, where they've been, and
I think at that
everything.
point you kind of realise how important the whole game was. And the guys are going to do that sorts of work.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of got to get switched on.
Every single Armagh City player was listed, and all their pros and all their cons. And I can remember walking out of that meeting actually.
Yeah, it's the first time we've ever had that.
And you were saying here, this is
the real deal.
And that game, probably, you lose that game, you're obviously not in the Bob Radcliffe final. You maybe go on the following week and you don't win your other.
Yeah, we were following momentum then. We're pushing on.
That game probably kick-started what we achieved.
It was season defining, that moment.
Yeah,
season defining.
Definitely.
So Georgie, what's your memories of that game? Because you scored the winner.
Yes, I scored the winner and got man of the match. So it was probably one of my best games in a Hanover shirt.
So the run up to the two finals, busy run up to Christmas. What was the run up like?
I'd like to hear the players answer this one, but no, listen, demanding. Boys know we demanded a lot of them, and let's remember, none of these players were getting a tuppence halfpenny for it, so they weren't. So the Radcliffe Cup final is always traditionally on Boxing Day, and through no questions asked, they had them boys in training on Christmas Eve, and the mentality around that, it's not just the training. So it's not, for me, it was right. Well, if I have them in training, they're not drinking. And that's all my thing was, keep them somewhere together. So they bought into it straight away. And again, we touched on it there, where we're going into meetings and with whiteboards out and with boys looking back at us and saying it was like nearly going back to school with that much information we give them. Probably, if I'm being honest, information overload. But I do remember Sargie, actually, his interview after the cup final, and he said, listen, no stone was left unturned, and they knew exactly their roles, and that's what we wanted to do for them, give them as much info as possible.
Went up on Christmas Eve to Dungannon. Ty McCrory actually organised it to get the home dressing room, so we could get the home dressing room. Me and him went up to Dungannon on Christmas Eve and set up our stuff, so we arrived on Boxing Day not having to do a thing. Everything was set up, and again, that was probably just one wee foot up and volley. We were arriving ready for football, nothing else.
It was those wee small details that I think was the big things that we looked into,
Final on Boxing Day. How do you prepare for a final on Boxing Day?
Obviously, it's very difficult around the likes of a Christmas period where you're going to be eating a lot of crap. You're going to be drinking a load of beer, whatever else. It's very difficult to get into the mindset of I need to eat clean, I need to eat healthy. There's no wild nights or whatever. It was very difficult, but with the magnitude of a cup final on the cards, there was no option, but we had to do it.
And obviously being well drilled as well, weren't we? We were advised of what to do and when to do it. And I can remember Hyndes making sure after we had our Christmas dinner to go out and go for a walk.
Yeah.
Pushing for those type of things. And
we're in training on Christmas Eve as well.
Yeah, in the morning time.
So if we touch on the Bob Radcliffe final first then, so what were your thoughts going into the game on Boxing Day? Did you think we were favourites or?
100%. And I remember leaving the meeting and saying to the boys, if you do everything on that there board, I have not one bit of doubt that we wouldn't win that match. If everything went to plan, and it probably went as perfect as you'll ever get it in your lifetime, so it was, and it was down to them carrying out the instructions.
So Regan scored just before half time. Then Whitey and Justy scored in the second half to make it 3-1, I think it was.
Yeah. Well, we actually started, the first thing I remember about that one was the formation. Volley didn't play the formation that they usually played. They usually play 4-3-3. And again, where Dean come in, Dean always was that wee one on the shoulder. He just says, we got to go match him. So I always give him his praise. And I remember going in at half time and we looked nervous. We definitely looked nervous going into the first half, and I just wanted to try and get those nerves out of them. So Regan's goal definitely settled us down. And at half time, I remember one of the things, I did say was, listen, I'd always had a rattle at them. I always would rather give them a rattle than praise them, if I'm being honest with you, because I thought they'd give you more after. But I remember going in and I turned around and said, listen, the nerves have gone now. So let's go out and be yourselves and put on a show and be the team that everyone thinks you are. And to me, the second half, they put on a show and proved, and I think I said in my interview after the match, how good a team we were at that stage.
I think not just in the Bob Radcliffe, but any game. See, I remember many games that we used to just say, match them, because match them and we were better than them. So see if a team played 4-4-2, we went 4-4-2 against them and matched them. If a team played 3-5, we'd just played the opposite of them and just matched them, because we thought we were better all over the park as players, and our players were versatile enough to go and play whatever system we asked.
So how did it feel to win such a prestigious trophy?
Huge. Remember again, I think I showed you the interview after the match, and tears in the eyes, like, simple as that there. Again, goes back to what I said about coming to Hanover. Everyone laughed. We Hanover, we're this, we're that, and they just used to say, 2 fingers, I'm driving this through the wall here, at them here. And when you get that over the line, and to be only the second mid-Ulster team to win that trophy, the penny drops. Was nothing to do about me and Dean. It was what the players had done, and again, for me, it was always about the club. To come back to see the amount of people in this club. And I remember just looking down at times, and grown men were nearly in tears. To see
Ozzy and Maggie and even Scotty and stuff before the backed us. That if we wanted anything, Ozzy would have got us.
Yeah, and I think those moments that you say about Scotty too, like Scotty's dream was to do this. So to actually finally remember those moments when Scotty says to me, you'll come and you'll do this, and I sort of said, Scotty, it ain't happening what you're thinking here. And then when you do actually do it, you're thinking, you're looking at the pictures on the wall and going, this is massive, by the way, and it was huge day for the club.
So then around a week later, we're in another final, so the Premier Cup final. So how do you prepare for this? Again, over the Christmas period, just 1 week later, players not really allowed to go out in the interim. What was the story here?
The complete opposite, Corky. It was, as I said at the start, it was play hard, party harder, and believe you me, we partied. Solid. And again, it wasn't one person in the team. It was every single member of the team, staff. We partied through the night, whatever, but it was then, listen, go and do your bit and party it, get it out of the system, go for a night, go for a couple of nights, and then it's back to, switching off. They knew that was okay to do, but as soon as that was switched off, there were a group of players that bought into everything and the switch was back on the right, we want to win an trophy, and the hunger was there off the back of the Rockcliffe. I always said getting the Rockcliffe off, although it was a big one, it was the monkey off the back for us to go on and push on, and it proved it.
When they wanted more as a group as well, as a collective. They wanted more and more silverware, and they knew they were good enough to get it.
So how did the match pan out then? I think 3-2 we won. Sargi sent off.
Yeah, and I went through him for a short cut. To be quite honest with you, because it was one of those moments when you're high up the pitch, and that's the wee lessons that you learn from your playing days, and sort of go, you bring it back, and as much as you win the match, you still was going them after. Remember that for the next time. You've made a tackle up the pitch here for no reason, and all you had to do was stand up. And to be fair, again, Sargi is one of the ones like them all that listened to us.
Yes, I think it was quite early in the game for a tackle. I think it was straight red, against Johnny Black, their striker. But in my defence, Hyndes maybe argue, but Johnny Black got up and told me it was not a red card, so... But it is what it is. I'm just thankful that the guys went on to win the match and done so well.
I don't really remember that much about that final, because it was at that stage now that my adrenaline and my hunger was like, I need to win this here for these boys. I need to do everything in our power to get this over the line for these boys, to keep them in this moment, because we knew we had a team that was, for me, capable of another 3-4 years of winning stuff. We got another year out of them. We'll come to that maybe later. But, at that time, do you remember probably more about the match?
don't even be a loss. I think
Monty Brown scored 1, Justy scored 2.
the
3-2.
Dukes come on. The Dukes come on.
Dukes came on.
And one man a match.
And one man a match.
Dukes come on, one man a match. And back to goal, I think back to goal, he was brilliant. I think he set up the winning goal for Justy, if I'm right. He took it on his chest, halfway line, hooked it over the corner, and it went through. I think Barry sponsored man of match, and Dukes got man of match, and he came on as a sub. So came on, changed the game, and a game with 10 men. I think that's the one thing Justy gave you too. We could play on the break against teams. We didn't need to go and attack teams at times. See, in the bigger games, we could sit in, be compact, and then just catch them on the break, because with somebody up front that we knew if we give them a chance, they'd go and score.
So then, going into the next season, so we had won the double, won the Ball Broadcliff in the Premier Cup. But what was the feeling going into the season after that then in Intermediate A? Because even though we'd won the double, we'd probably fizzled out really in the league season before and didn't really do too well.
With too many, I think with 15 or 16 games left in the league because of all the cups we were in. And I think, if I'm right in saying, is that the one each from one East Lane?
Yeah, I think the big thing is
Can I tell them about that one? So I went away for a weekend and we're on a run, and if we had to win all the games, blah blah blah. So I handed over the reins to Dean for 1 week and withdrew, and that sort of ended our league campaign, to say the least. So that wasn't a real good moment, but no. No, and that one, it was too much to do. Darlingstown were actually moving up the leagues, if you remember that stage. They were paying money. So, we were probably looking at that stage. If Darlingstown win it, they were going out of the league. So keep in touch with them. And what was felt, the next year, and the standout one for me that time was the amount of weddings and stag do's and everything was going on in that there year was absolutely frying my head, because I've missed weddings, I've missed a lot of things through football, and I don't think about it. I think that's the natural thing to do. But for these guys who weren't getting paid, they were like, I have to go to my mate's wedding, and we were like, no, you're not. But they went anyway. So you had there was a wee bit of pushing and pulling. And I remember standing up at the dinner, and I remember, I think it was you actually, or someone turned around and said, they would won 2 trophies, real euphoria and all like that there. And I was like, and they were based, do not start being negative here. And I said, listen, we have counted up to April, and there's maybe 70 some times that people have been away. So that's 70 sends off.
I'd say that's like 76 suspensions.
Yeah, and I said, if we cut it in half, we'll win the league. And the next year with 23 times we're away, so less than half will won the league.
So in that season then, 2018, 2019, again, we went in a good Premier Cup run, and we ended up in the final and eventually lifted the trophy. So for that final then, how did that game pan out?
Well, I'll tell you my bit about the final. It was a very, very short half-time talk. We were 1-0 down, and I just literally remember going in, and I remember coming out in the club afterwards, and someone says to me, well, what did you say to them in half-time? But sometimes at that stage they needed a quick rattle and then let them stew. And I remember just doing a rattle and basically said, do everything in your power here, because this is an all bit of history for, third trophy and stuff like that. And we always knew, if I'm being honest with you, when you, the likes of Neil McCullough, had won 3 trophies. So, our desire was to see this group of people that everyone thought was the best players to ever play for the club and all that there. Our desire was to make sure they were by winning the 4 trophies or more. And thankfully they went on to do it. So half time, 1-0 down, and from there you'll probably.
No, I think as a group, again, what you said, if you go in half time, give them a wee quick one. At that stage, they were at a point where you didn't need to really manage the dressing room, manage itself. So you had people in there that, if you went in, other people talked as well. People like even toppers and people like that would have stood up and said stuff, Jason, and different things. So we didn't really need to be doing lots at half time. They knew themselves if there was the odd occasion. But I think you knew what you'd get out of them in the second half, and I think they went and done the business. And again, I think we beat Rich Hill, was it? That one 2-1?
2-1.
And
again, they probably deserved to win the trophy.
Justy, you'd scored 2 goals again then. You'd scored 2 goals, 1 man in the match, and we won 2-1.
Yeah, that one I can remember more so about. I remember it because Rich Hill had a centre half, Nicky Finlay, who didn't give my head one bit of peace the whole game between his push and his kicking. I've known him for a wee while, so yeah, he knew what to do to get me going. But yeah, Michael Wilson, or sorry, Skippy, we got the bus on the way up. We were talking about different scenarios of, you know, what way the final would go, what would be the perfect scenario. And we had actually envisioned ourselves going 1-0 down, and for me to come back and score 2. And the way we had explained it on the bus is exactly how it really happened. For something like to happen as a player it's a special moment, but for the guys to do it is...
Can you remember that wasn't there a counter-attack goal, wasn't it? Like a really end.
Counter-attack goal to equalise.
Yes.
To make it 1-1, and then there was a chip, a cross came in to make it 2-1.
Mm-hmm. I just remember that first
post.
equaliser kick-starting the game, so it turned its head, didn't it?
And give us a bit of momentum, and then once we scored the winner, to turn around and see the whole, all the fans going crazy, it was special, very, very special.
So the focus then had to turn back to the league. So was this difficult to keep this goal in focus?
I think, yeah, straight after the cup final, we played Banbridge, beat 2-1, I think. But after that, there we went on a bit of a winning streak. 12 games, I think.
Yeah, I think with 12 games left, and I remember the dopey wee things that I do, and I remember I wouldn't show it to anyone, wouldn't even show it to him, and I put a wee note in my wallet, and I said, it was actually 11 games, so it was, whatever game it was after, it was definitely 11 games, and I had win 9, and we'll win the league, and we ended up winning 10 and drawing 1, I think.
Yeah.
So it was, so that was the task that we had to do. It was probably at that stage undoable, if I'm being honest with you. But we had a serious drive in the change rooms that, you know, Rockcliffe for me is the biggest one will ever be done here, you know, and certainly in my time. The league is the one that everyone wants, if you know what I mean, as a player, because over the course of the season and the league tables don't lie. And I remember there was some huge games, probably Windmill. I know he likes the Windmill one. Let him talk about the Windmill one.
I think Windmill away for me was the game. I think just because at the end, I know probably a player that well respected to him and also from John Joe Maguire, and he came into our dress. He actually knocked the door and says, "Can I come in and speak to your players?" After the game, and we were the first team to beat them at Dialaki, and since it went back to play there, I think, and we beat them 3-1 up there. And he knocked the door and came in and says, "Lads, he's actually bothered us. The fittest team we've played, the best team we've played, and I hope he's going to win the league." And for me, somebody like that coming in, I think it sort of probably cemented what we thought, and we then knew we were ready to win the league, I think, at that stage.
I think a significant game that stands out to me near the end of that campaign was playing Crowe away midweek. So they had came into a bit of money and had ex-Irish League players playing for them, George McMullen, etc. And they were going for the league title with us. I can remember Gilby, who was a new signing for us that year, coming on and being outstanding that game.
Yeah, again, you said it, there was a couple of wingers actually, and we'd done our homework on them, and basically one of them had just dropped down the levels. He was far higher in the levels, very, very fast, and he was playing against Rooney in the first half. And again, Dean had touched on it, Rooney was a 7 out of 10 every single game, never give you any trouble. We're getting beat 2-1. At that stage, you couldn't have lost the match. That's where it was. It was 9 games in my pocket, and you were notching them down. So you lost one, you were gone. It was as simple as that. Crew would have took over. And again, I remember that team talk. I remember going down, and I'd never shouted it really in my life. Never had to. And I remember walking in, and I was like, he was terrible. He was getting a complete run around, and I actually went through him for a shortcut. And any odd player, like if it had been Toppers or someone that said, or Sarge or someone, okay, that'll give you some response. And Rooney just sits there, and I'm like, say something back, my big, yeah, at least, like, you know, give me a wee bit back. But he didn't say a thing. And again, it was one of those moments that I remember clearly for team talk. Very, very short, really threw them for a shortcut. And it was a short team talk. And I remember walking up the steps going, you had to walk up the steps, get out on the pitch again. And I remember,
we walked out early.
I walked out early, and I remember Dean and Glenn coming up them, and he says, they're going. Their heads are going. And he says, well, listen, if they don't get up off that team talk, they're not getting up for anything. And they won 6-2, and it was 6-3, was it?
6-3.
6-3, and I've never seen a second half of football like it. It was that moment when you just see things and you sit back and you're actually enjoying it and going, we're unbelievable here. We were hitting form that
The other thing we used to do against Crewe, we used to play 4-4-2.
Yeah.
And we used to go 3 at the back against Crewe. So we played 3 at the back, went 3-5-2, and Rooney and Shane played wing backs. Jake played as a 10, used to push in. So we actually adopted. We used to go and watch teams and adapt our game to beat them. And I don't think many odd teams did. Every odd team used to just play the way they played. We played the way we played to beat the odd team.
So the last game of the season then away to AFC, what obviously went in that good run, and we basically had the league wrapped up by then. We had 2 buses went over for a 10-minute bus journey. So it shows you it was a bit of a party atmosphere, but we remained professional and 1-8-1. So how did that feel? Was that more like a relief?
Well, I think before that, yeah,
Ballymaccash game was a big game. I'll let him say about the Ballymaccash game.
I think probably a most emotional game. I think me and him were crying our lamps out after, because I think when we won the league and we were 1 each, I think, late on, and Shane scored maybe in the 94th minute, and we were just hammering the door for 10-15 minutes. We were just launching balls forward to try, because we knew it meant everything. But Shane scored. I remember coming off, and I think a crown moment for Vicky Fleming came up this and sort of gives a wee bit of praise. And probably anybody knows Vicky Fleming's done everything in football, a Portdown legend, and getting people like that back supporting the club, like Garfield Bracey, Paul Irwin, Vicky Fleming, Remy McLaughlin, people
Tony
like that.
McCabe.
Tony McCabe, all those all those coming down watching us again. It showed that the progression we'd made, and I think that was a crying moment coming off. And we knew, because we'd to play FC Craigavon the next week, that was the game that won us the league.
The AFC one's probably one of the funny wee stories. So obviously me and him living beside each other, went down to, it was a good night and down barbecue, and the next thing went down anyway, and a couple of beer, and it was about 8 o'clock, and I says, right, I'm away up the house, and Caroline was sitting there, and Kirsty was sitting there, and he was sitting there, and he says, what are you going up the house for? And I goes, I'm going up to prepare for the match. He says, are you serious? It's AFC, like, we'll tank these ones. He says, mate, I'm going through exact same detail as I went up. I left the barbecue and went through the exact same thing, because as much as you knew we're a lot better on them, you still had to do it, and you still had to get that on. I think it meant it more because it was Easter weekend, so it meant we could party longer without having to take sick out of work. So it all tied in. But when you seen 2 buses there, and again, the boys will probably say, you set it up for, your team talk, and I was really adamant in my head, do not drop our standards, do every single wee bit of detail that you do in every all match. And again, even at half time, I can't remember, it was 3-4-5 or whatever we were up, that the level didn't stop until the final whistle, and then
Gilby
got
got
our
his nose
awards.
broken in the game, and he didn't want to go. He had to go to. He ended up having to go to hospital, but he didn't want to go to hospital because him and Justy, I think, were tied for top goal scorer, and Justy ended up winning. But he didn't want to come off with a broken nose because he didn't want to lose out in top goal scorer.
Sargy, how did it feel for you? Because you'd been down from your sort of 14 years of age, and you'd seen the club win intermediate A and then get relegated, and now we'd have went full circle again with a full new group of players.
Obviously brilliant, great time. Obviously you want to win trophies and stuff when you play, but couldn't have went any better for me, from where I started with the seconds and then pushed on and stuff. So just proud and a privilege to lift trophies and be the captain, of course.
So between the first and seconds then, that time period between 2015 to 2019 was probably the most successful and most enjoyable in the club's history in terms of recognition, promotions and trophy wins. The next season then there was another significant milestone, so the club reached the 5th round of the Irish Cup for the first time, and we ended up playing Cliftonville at Solitude. So can you tell me a bit about that?
Lots of build up, to be honest, lots of preparation. I think again, when we went through a couple of rounds, I think we got a bad one round, maybe a couple of difficult games, but again, I was on the committee at that stage, so from a committee and a club's perspective, it was another milestone. We'd never been that far, and I think it was again pushing those boundaries. And I think we brought 400 supporters, if I'm right, to Solitude that day. So it was massive from a club perspective, and just even for me personally, it was probably what we'd achieved throughout the time.
Even the whole build up as well. I think Hyndes, you were up at Windsor for the draw and ended up being interviewed on TV and stuff like that.
Again, those moments for me were unreal for the club. Didn't faze me in one bit about nothing to do with Stephen Hyndes, but those moments were the best wee things, and some of the stupid things that I would go through my head when I was going those things was, again, back to the start, people, the blue love hearts. You know, we put up. I started a couple of things putting blue love hearts up, and the whole time was absolutely nearly going in convulsions. What are these boys doing putting blue love hearts up? And see, when you seen that, it was an all two fingers moment. Most of the clubs around the place laughing at us. That now we small Hanover sitting at Windsor Park getting interviewed. So again, a big occasion for the club. Probably the biggest occasion for the club. But again, the Rockcliffe won't be beat for me. Like.
So while you're both still connected to the club and will be down a lot supporting, you have both obviously moved on. So Hyndes, you're coaching with Portadown in the Irish League, and Dean, you're scouting for clubs like North City. But when you look back at your time with Hanover, what are your most fond memories?
I think the friendships, if I'm being honest. I think if you look at the teams we built and the players we had and the friends we made, I think if you go to any wedding that any of the boys are getting married, everybody's there. They're on the wedding parties, and I think long-term friendships and friends for life, that's probably my biggest memory. But in football terms, I think the Bob Rockcliffe for me stands out as a day that won't be beaten.
I'm glad you said it, because I was saying it too. Like football, the medals, probably don't mean anything to me, if I'm being totally honest with you. It was the whole memories and the days that were created. And I remember sitting up there in the Cliftonville match in the corner and looking down. I was saying the bill actually before it started, and I remember just seeing the whole club packed, wives, girlfriends, kids. My kids were there and all the rest. And I looked, and those wee moments for me, probably getting a bit teary. Tell you the truth, where they're the ones that mean the most to me, like, to be honest with you. Football wise, day occasion wise, the Rockcliffe will never be beat, like. And I'll go as far to say it'll be a long time, that the club will find a day that big again. And that's not because of us, it's because of the players, the committee, everything that bought into that whole day. It was exceptional.
And Bill, you sort of laid the foundations for these two and got them into coaching as well. But over this whole time period, what are some of your fondest memories?
I'm about the same as Hyndes there. I think maybe it's an age thing. I wasn't fortunate enough to win trophies, but achieved my goal of getting all these lads into the club and getting promotion back to intermediate A. That was for me on the football side of it. Personally, my pride and from then right up to now is watching my son play for the club, and now watching my grandson Harry play for the club.
Winning trophies and making friendships, I'm still best mates with a lot of people that I've played with for years. You take a look at my wedding photo, there's not too many boys in it that haven't featured for Hanover in some sort of way. But I think, the one defining moment that everyone will speak about is the Bob Rockcliffe final, and, it's one day that will never be forgotten ever in the history of our football club.
What about you, Reid?
Probably similar to what Lappin has said there. Going right back to the start, probably signing. Because I remember when me and you signed, I walked into the college like I'd signed for United. And that's the truth. Like, I thought it was nothing like it. Obviously, playing with all my mates, it's probably cliche to say, oh, you're playing with your mates, but we were all best mates. Still are to this day. And then on the pitch winning, I suppose. That season we went undefeated. What the first done around that time, that period, it was like it was never going to end. That's absolutely brilliant, wasn't it? No, unreal.
What about you, Wayne?
Apart from the success base, like the fondest memory I have of Hanover is probably this place. It's just, there's so much history, just coming in through them doors, and that's away from the football. I sort of grew up in here. I couldn't wait to get into the club on a Saturday, and I can remember washing ashtrays when I was about 8 or 9 years of age, making sandwiches, seeing who's going to come through the door next, and seeing new people come in and seeing if they're going to, straight away if a player's going to click or not. And there's not too many people that walk through that door that you don't click with. But yeah, probably the fondest memory I have is just probably this place in general.